Alright, how's everybody doing? So on this episode, might be a little bit more raw than normal. Again, I got a full house. We got two new puppies. My granddaughter's here, so there may be some sounds that you hear that may come in and out. I don't know. Just being real tonight, today, again. So tonight, I want to talk music. I want to talk influences. I want to talk hip hop. I want to talk just what we grew up on. And who I got with me tonight is the one and only Illustrate. For those in Colorado know him very well. A lot of us came up under him. So, I introduced you, but say some stuff.
All right. What's up, everybody? Like Lito said, my name is Illustrate. I've been involved predominantly in the Colorado Christian hip hop scene for the last 30 years. I've worked with so many artists and met so many amazing people. There's a lot I could name, but we would be here for a while. But I've been blessed to help found the movement in Colorado. Back in the days of Preachers in the Hood and Divine Flavor and God's New Creation, when they were first starting to hit the mainstream and hit national platforms. I was privileged to be a part of that scene back then, and have just stayed consistent, making music, producing, doing concerts and outreaches, and just meeting a lot of great people and trying to encourage people to explore their giftings and their faith and just see what God has for them in what we do. So it's been a great experience.
Right. I remember all of it. We're going to have to save that for another podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
We're going to get into that. I'm telling you that right now. But tonight, I really want to talk about influences. Like for me, my family was very, very musical as far as listener round went. Like I had an uncle that listened to all East Coast stuff. So, I was listening to like Rockmaster Scott. I was listening to, Curtis Blow. I was listening to, Paul Hardcastle. Some little techno stuff in there. He had that whole.
Okay.
It was crazy because like he had the European scene, but he also had the East Coast scene. So it was kind of cool to have a little bit of everything. And then on the other side, I had my uncle. And I'm just strictly talking hip hop here, but I had my uncle on the other side. Introduced me to like Ice-T, introduced me to the Funkadelics, introduced me to a lot of that West Coast sound music. And so it was kind of cool, So I listened to a lot of other stuff, but at that point, with them two influences, it really kind of filtered me towards hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I grew up listening to mainly rock music growing up because that's what my dad listened to. So at the end of elementary school, I was listening to like Bon Jovi, Cinderella, and a lot of the groups from that era. But I was getting bored with it. Like I just felt like there was something else. And then my parents had moved us to a new house. So, I had all kinds of new kids to meet in the neighborhood. And there was this kid, Ricky, who lived at the end of the cul-de-sac. And he and I got to be cool. And his brother, Nick, was the type of guy, like, when he went up and down the street, like, his music was bumping. And you're like, oh, okay, he's leaving or he's coming home. And he was always playing stuff like Biz Markie and Big Daddy Kane. A lot of early LL Cool J, and I was interested. I'm like, that's new. Like, I haven't heard this stuff. Like, what is this? So as I got to be cool with Ricky, I just started expressing my interest in what his brother was playing. And then one day I got home from school and Rick and I were hanging out, and he was like, yeah, man, my brother Nick made this mixtape for you. And it had Grandmaster Flash. It had LL Cool J, Kool Moe Dee, couple other artists. But yeah, I played that tape out, man. Like, I think for the next 2 months, that's all I listened to, just trying to learn the words and, just catch the vibe of the music. And yeah, I just gravitated to it. Like, it just made sense all of a sudden to where everything else I was listening to before that, I was just kind of getting bored with it.
Yeah. See, for me, it was cool. Cause like I had my uncles and that was around, 83, 84. So that was early hip hop.
Yeah.
And so as I grew and I started to develop an ear for myself, I started listening to all kinds of different stuff. It was crazy for me. There was a place here off of Colfax I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it was called Sunshine Records.
Yeah, I remember Sunshine. Yeah, I
Yeah,
actually used to
that's
sell
where I
my
used to get
stuff
my
there.
stuff, man. It was dope. It
Okay.
was dope, you know. Like, and then like the box came in around, late '80s, early '90s, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I learned a lot of the other artists that kind of you couldn't get a hold of, you couldn't figure out, and so that was kind of a crazy time too, because it just introduced me to more music,
Yeah.
because I was the same with you, I listened to growing up in Brighton, I would listen to the rock because
Mm-hmm.
I was riding a skateboard, rolling in a skateboard. I
Yeah.
was over here listening to the country music because the Cowboys in
Yeah.
because we had a bunch of
That's
Brighton
Brighton.
was a farm town, so
Yep.
you had that mix. So so my library was so diverse and so eclectic, you know. So let
Mm-hmm.
me ask you this: when you were listening to all the music, did any of them influence the way you did music?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in those earlier years, because just the way that they did it, like just speaking their rhymes over beats, like it just spoke to me in a way I really don't even know how to put into words. It was just one of those things where I'm like, man, I need to figure out how to do this. As a kid, um, it was a desire that started growing in me and it never went away. Like even all these years later, like it's still there,
Okay.
so it's definitely it's affected my life and the way I create music. Just because back then, like you had to really bring it, like you had to give it your best effort. You had to come up with something original and new, and that was the mindset I came up with when I started doing music. It's just like you can't bite somebody else's style. You can't just hijack things from other people because in the culture now it's different because people you can get away with it more to a degree, but back then like that might end what you're doing. You could lose everybody's respect and they're like, nah, you're a biter, man, we don't want to deal with you, like bring something real or go home. So
Right,
that was the
right.
mentality that I always had, even working in the Christian community. Like it used to make me crazy when I heard artists stealing other people's styles. And I'm like, we can't do that. Like, this is hip hop and we bring something new, bring your own
Right.
flavor to it. And that's something that always influenced me, especially like listening to LL and Biz Markie and Big Daddy Kane, Cool Mo D. Like they all had their own unique approaches to making music and how they did things. So I thrived off of that. Well, I took their influence and, but I always try to create my own thing from that influence.
Right. Right. See, and it's funny with me. It was a little bit different. I
Mm,
found a lot of who and what they were created who I was.
mm,
Like it's funny. Like I think back and didn't even realize it, but like I did a song called Paul, and the cadence in
mm.
that song ended up it totally different hip hop. It was hip hop, but I can think of that cadence and think of an Aerosmith song
Mm.
and how the cadence was kind of the same, you know.
Interesting.
And it was not something I was doing deliberate, but it was the music was just in me that I felt that, and I started doing it that way. Like I think that it was a verse, and then a little break, and then a verse,
Hmm.
then a little break, and there's that song by Aerosmith called Sweet Emotion, and
Okay.
I didn't
I
catch
got
that until like years later after I recorded the song. I happened to be listening to radio, and I'm sitting there like kind of looking back and forth, kind of going, "What the heck was that?" You know?
you.
And
Hmm.
it's funny, like even like I could think of Ghetto Boys, how they had that album cover
Hmm.
with Bushwick on the gurney.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The
see,
Ghetto
see,
Boys.
that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking when I did Deathbed Declarations.
Oh snap. Okay.
Yeah, so that album cover. That album cover was
Yeah.
was when I was intubated. When I
Yeah.
was
I
when I had
remember
the
that.
stroke when I was in the hospital. But
Yeah.
it was just those influences for me were like, this is a part of who I am. I'm hip hop. This is, I wasn't intentionally trying to bite off anybody, but it was just a matter of, to me, it was paying homage,
Yeah,
You know what I'm
I
saying?
got you.
So
Hmm.
it was kind of weird how I found them bleeding into to what I was doing, over the years, and it was crazy. Like again, I was, you remember me in the beginning. I was trying to find my voice, like
Yeah.
I didn't like the way my voice sounded, so I created this voice, and then later on somebody says, "Oh, you sound like Cypress Hill, you sound like Be
Yeah, I
Real," and I'm
remember
like,
that.
I wasn't trying to be like Be Real. I was experimenting with some different stuff. Again, I
Yeah,
wasn't
I
trying to
remember that.
mimic anybody, but at the same time, it was just that was in me. And it's
Hmm.
crazy that, that it bled through for me. Very different than you, but
Yeah.
again, I had a good time doing it.
Yeah. And honestly, like I'm sure if you look back at my earlier stuff, you'll see the influences. Even though in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, I'm being original. I'm doing something different. But you and I have known each other. You can be like, no, bro, this artist inspired you for this song, and then this
Right,
artist
right.
was here. Like, it's just the way it goes as creatives, and like you said, trying to find your voice. Like we all have gone through that in different ways, and
Right.
we end up mimicking, whoever we're listening to at the time. And that actually reminds me of a conversation I had with Man of War, where when he hears people's newest stuff, he can figure out who they've been listening to recently while they've been writing and recording, because whoever they've been
Okay.
listening to reflects in whatever they're making.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I laughed about it when he said that, but I thought about it and I'm like, no, there's a lot of truth to that. So,
It's funny. Like I study, I guess you could say, a
hmm.
lot of the genre. I look into them. I watch stuff like and one of the dudes, and I don't know if you'll know this name or not, but one of the dudes that back in the day that I used to listen to, that I don't think anybody ever heard of, really, honestly, very few at least, was Awesome Dre.
Oh yeah, I knew Awesome Dre. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
at least knew the name.
yeah.
Oh,
Very few
so
people listened to what he had, and it's funny. The other day I watched an interview with him, and I thought it was dope because I seen a lot of similarities in his life, in my life. No, by no
mm,
means am I on that level, but it was
yeah,
cool because he was talking about how he never looked at himself as anything other than just somebody who was creating music. And
okay,
it was cool because he was saying like Public Enemy and all these big heavy hitters were were um were like, "Hey, we heard you. We know your stuff. We know," like fans, actually, like fans of
that's
his.
dope.
And it was kind of crazy. Like I think about that, and I think about like when I first started off in the music, because again I switched everything.
Hmm.
Like I think there was a gap between in hip hop, secular hip hop, at least for me, from about 95, 96, all the way to 2001. So I like skipped a whole section of hip hop, because I converted
Hmm.
completely to CHH, to Christian hip hop. And
Yeah.
so, like growing up then, there were artists that I was looking up to and saying, "Oh, that'd be cool to ever meet them, to do this." And then years
Hmm.
later, finding myself doing shows with them,
Yeah.
like being on sharing the stage with LA Symphony, sharing the stage with Man of War. Man of War was one
Hmm.
of the biggest ones for me. And I've
Yeah.
told you this story before. When I
Yeah.
heard him on oh, what's that track he did with Sackcloth? But there was that
Oh
one version
yeah.
that he was on, Rising Suns,
Yeah.
and you could only find that version at the time on the vinyl.
Yeah. I had
Just to
that
hear
vinyl.
him in that track was like, it would be so cool to meet him one day.
Yeah.
And here we are years later, and and
Yeah.
and we
We're
we
friends
friends.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, we friends. It
Pretty
blew my
wild.
mind. And there was a story one time. This is what really blew my mind. Is again because we were booking shows and doing things,
Hmm.
and I booked him for shows and stuff. And then one time, me and the kids and Stacy and the kids were going to a movie, and here's another name I'll drop. JJ Luz,
Mm.
jumped. He had my phone. He used to call me, and his
Yeah.
phone number popped up on my phone, and it was Man of War saying, "Well, this is Man of War." And I'm like, whatever. Nah, you ain't know, because I thought Joseph was
Mm.
messing with me, and
Yeah.
so it was
He could be a
crazy. But
prankster sometimes.
I know, so that's why I thought it was, and then I felt dumb afterwards. I'm like, oh,
Mm.
because again, I never saw us on that level. Where
Yeah.
he would actually call my phone outside of ministry, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was cool. You ever experienced things like that?
Um, I've not to that degree where people just call me that I wasn't expecting, but I've had the chance to meet artists like Frost T. He and I have worked together on different events and different songs over the years. And honestly, I don't even remember. Oh no, I do remember how we connected. He was doing Underground Fire magazine back then, and he
I
he
remember
just
that.
sent me one in the mail, and he was just looking for artists who wanted to promote their music, and that's really how he and I got to be cool. Was just me paying to be in his magazine and just watching the magazine grow. I think he ended up doing, I think like 8 or 9. I don't know if episodes the right word for the magazine, but yeah, he had 8 different magazines that got put out, and I was advertising my stuff in almost all of them, and that just kind of branched into me flying out there and doing events, recording songs with him. Me and Dant and Joe Be Real went out there, and like I think we
Right,
spent like a
right.
week just hanging out doing music. And at one point I even lived with the guy for like 2.5 months. I was out in Los Angeles recording and helping him run the youth group that he was pastoring at the time. And I'd have never expected, an opportunity like that, and those are things you don't really look for, but they just kind of happen along the way. It was like, wow, man, like I'm hanging out with Frosty. And, at one point it was like, okay, I'm on Frosty's new album. Like, this is crazy, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So, I can definitely relate. Like, people you look up to, like, it's crazy being friends. Like, even with Shadow of the Locust and now being a member of that crew. I remember when Dirt first came out, like, we were all tripping out. Like, who is this guy?
Right, right.
His approach to music, um, his creativity, like everything about him was so different from everybody that was coming out. And I was like, man, like if there's any kind of crew like I would really love to be a part of, it's Shadow of the Locust. And it wasn't anything I was actively looking for. I would just run into Dirt like here and there at events. Like we did an event we were both at in Nashville, a couple of events in California, and we loosely kept in touch. And then, we were talking probably like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, where he's like, hey, how come you never asked to join Shadow of the Locust? I was like, what do you mean? Like, it could have been that easy? And he's like, yeah, dude, like, we go back a long ways. Like, all you had to do was ask. And I was
Wow.
like, yo, I've been sitting here all this time just praying for this opportunity.
And there it was.
Yeah, like, it was literally just calling up a friend because, he and I had built, we didn't talk a lot, but we built a friendship by that point. And all I had to do was call him and be like, hey, can I be a part of the team? And it was that simple. So, that's always kind of blown my mind because back then, like, Dirt was the guy we were all striving to reach, and we were creatively we were chasing him because he was just bringing something so new
Right,
that
right.
because I mean Tunnel Rats were dope, they were doing their thing. And who else, man, this is really horrible, I can't remember their name. Ambassador and Fanatic, Cross Movement.
Oh, cross
um
movement. Yep, cross movement.
they were bringing something new, but there was just something about what Dirt was doing that I'm like, man, I really want to join forces here and see what he's doing.
Oh, see, in them early days, bro, I'm telling you, you introduced me to some music. I think when I first stepped in the scene, when I first
Hmm.
stepped into the scene, I went into your house, and you
Hmm.
had a little rack. You remember that rack?
I
And in
do,
that
like,
rack, and in that rack, it was like old school hip hop, like
yeah.
like secular music. Because again, I didn't grow up in the church, so not in the church I know now. But
Hmm.
and I didn't attend church really. Honestly, I was that Christmas and Easter church attender.
Okay.
But again, music was music to me. And so as I begin, like I said, that whole section of life for me where I had kind of thrown out secular hip hop, you introduced me to so much Christian hip hop early in the years that was just mind boggling. Like Sons of Intellect. You brought
Hmm.
me, of course, Tunnel Rats, like you said. I got to hear Steph Static. I heard as they started to break out into doing their own little things.
Yeah.
LA Symphony, and just all the different artists doing their things. Dirt, I can still remember to this day when you brought Dirt to Denver, and
Mm.
and we were doing the show at the church, and he grabbed my son and put
I
him on
remember
his
that.
shoulders, and he was just sitting
Yeah.
there because he missed his kids because he was on tour
Hmm.
and he hadn't seen his kids in a minute. So he's over
Yeah.
there, and Marcus was cool until he reached down and felt the dreadlocks and was like,
Yeah. And he's
"Oh!"
like, "Who is this?"
Yeah, he freaked out. But again, it was cool back then because
Yeah.
honestly, I mean, especially here in Colorado and in Denver, we were
Hmm.
kind of all real tight.
Yeah.
It's like we did shows together, we interacted with together, and even times we spent time with each other's families. Went
Yeah.
out to eat. Like I can remember several times after the show, mobbing the Village Inn or on
Yeah.
IHOP just to hang out and just
Yeah.
fellowship.
Every event, like that was just a given.
Man, it was dope. It
Yeah.
was
I
dope.
miss
And
those
again,
days.
again, I'll be straight up, man. A lot
Hmm.
of what I learned and a lot of who I was a tribute to you.
Wow.
Watching you do things, watching you, like when you would promote shows, I was taking notes. I was
Wow.
sitting there, okay, he's doing that, got a sound guy do that, and I would take notes, and then
Hmm.
you know we kind of all life happened and we all went our ways, but again, having that friendship that we had, and almost like I dare to say discipleship with one another in the
Yeah.
music. We really taught each other a lot,
Yeah.
and so I was able to start promoting shows and start doing things. But again, it was birthed out of the things you did,
Wow.
and again, like even like I can remember being at your house one time, and I said, "Oh, I'd love to produce someday," and you're like, "Take my keyboard for a ride,"
Hmm.
and I'm like, "Well, it ain't my style. I don't play instruments. I don't do this," but I found my way, and I ended up producing
Hmm.
music, and I like all the things I strive to be. There were people there to teach us and teach you, and then
Yeah.
and I think that was the coolest organic thing that we had back then.
Yeah. We had a genuine community, and we were looking out for each other. We were always trying to, instead of outdo each other. I think we just realized we all needed each other because our scene was small. That was back in the days where you could go to the Christian bookstore, and if there was anything new, you call your friends and you're like, "Yo, this new tape drop, this new CD's here, come get it."
Right,
And
right.
that's how we found out about new music. And we didn't have a lot to really work with. A lot of churches I know were still a little sus with all of us, like, "Oh, you guys are rappers, okay, okay, yeah, we'll maybe let you come do something." So we were all working through all that, and especially, us local guys that hadn't gotten the national recognition, like we built our own community. And yeah, like just going to Village Inn or Denny's after an event and just talking life and acting stupid,
Right, right.
just having fun. Like, yeah, I mean, that was, it was so, I don't know, it gave us that sense of community we needed. I think is the best way to explain that. And we had people to lean on. So when we were struggling creatively or frustrated with just how the scene was, like we had people around us that related, and we could lean on each other during those times. So yeah, there's a lot of good memories, man.
Well, I think one of the dopest things, and I think we're getting to that mark here, but I think one of the dopest things is after the music stopped,
Hmm.
the relationship didn't stop.
Yeah, it got even stronger.
It was dope. It was dope. Like
Yeah.
even today I spent time with somebody that and I'm trying not to drop names. I don't like that. But I
Hmm.
got to spend time with somebody today that that again in the beginning years was another influence on me.
Hmm.
And again just throughout life as ministry changes, as we grow and develop into different people and take on new things, it was kind of dope how we still, no matter what, encourage one another.
Hmm.
That's something again, I'm not in the scene as much now. So let me ask you this, because you're
Hmm.
still kind of in it a little bit. Does that still happen?
I think, with a lot of us, like we still have those family bonds. I've definitely built some amazing friendships, with G Life, Precise, D'Angelo Netio. There's a lot of other folks. So if I'm forgetting people's names, please don't be mad at me. I love y'all.
Right, right,
um, you just meet people, and when life happens, they show up. And a lot of times it's the people you don't suspect. Even like how, we got to be friends, and you, me, and Chris, the way life has hit at times, like we've always shown up for each other,
right, right. And we've
and I'm
been through
sure,
some life together.
yeah, we have definitely, we have seen the best and the worst in each other, and we still rock with each other. It's just
Right,
like
right.
that brotherhood is there, and I'm grateful for it, and I think out of everything I've been involved with over the years, it's the relationships that I've built that mean the most. Like I could say, yeah, I've been doing this, and this. I've put out so many albums. I've done these tours. None of that matters. It's really about the relationships that have been built along the way, and the people who I've been able to be like, hey, man, I am going through this. I don't know a way forward, and it's the people that have been like, hey, we'll figure it out together.
Right.
That's been the most valuable thing for me. Excuse me, this cough is
Oh, you good?
making
You
me
good?
crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all about the relationships built, and it's less about the accomplishments, because those are fun. Those have their places, but the relationships hold the most weight through the whole process.
Yeah. See, I think for me, again, we're coming up on the time here. I was
Mm.
going to cut it at 25, but we're going to go a
Okay.
little bit longer. We can go about another 5 more minutes. But for me, like, again, I would not be the man I am without a lot of people.
Yeah,
Chris being one
facts.
of them.
Hmm.
I mean, age and flow, preachers in the hood. I
Yeah,
would not be where I am without them.
yeah,
Because even they
absolutely.
taught me a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, Corey Clark back then he was known as Double C
double
Loke.
CeeLo.
Yep. And so it was like all these people that we had that really built into us. I mean,
Hmm.
you with the Springs crew, again,
Yeah,
I was more on this side, I always stood in the local Denver area, but again, wasn't planning on coming to this point of what we're talking about, but really, I mean, this is where it developed into from a
yeah,
listener, and again, I think at some point in the future, I think we really need to sit down and maybe have some little boxes all over and just
yeah.
share life with one another.
That
You
would be
know,
really
I've
dope.
already talked to Flo. I've talked to him today about doing it. So maybe the next
Okay,
one, all
dope.
three of us get on.
That
And we
would be
can we
really
can just
dope,
do
man.
some. We can just do a big old live chat here and just do a big old podcast with all of us sharing
Yeah,
stories from the road. You know,
yeah, that would be
but
awesome.
again, yeah, yeah. So let me ask you this. Let me leave it with this.
Okay.
What's it like in Memphis?
It's a very different place than I expected it to be.
Okay.
It's one of those things where I know I am exactly where God wants me. I'm just still processing why. I have had zero success in connecting into the music scene out here. Like, I can't attribute anything other than it's just an act of God, because I've met a handful of artists, and you either got the ones that act like you're getting way too personal just because you're like, oh, you're an artist? What do you do? Like, can I listen to your stuff? And they start looking at you like, why you want to know? And it's like, oh, my bad. Okay.
Right.
Never had that
Right.
happen. So, and
Yeah.
then other artists I've met who are a little more serious and they're doing events. Life just kind of has had a way of stopping us from connecting. So,
Hmm.
it's my family and I, we've all had a lot of conversations about it, but ultimately it comes down to no, God wants us right here. We've got an amazing church, and my kids are plugged in a way where they are exploring gifts that they didn't have the opportunity before. Like my son's our praise team's drummer. My daughter plays guitar for the team. They wouldn't have had those opportunities at this point, for different reasons. Excuse me, man. My wife is singing on the praise team,
Okay.
and it's what just watching them grow in their giftings has been amazing. So if that's one of the main reasons we're here is so my family can have that space to grow, then cool. Like, I'm loving it. I'm also taking some ministerial classes, and my pastor is now giving me an opportunity to preach once in a while, which I've had that opportunity with other churches, but I didn't take advantage of it because I always felt like, it just wasn't something I was really that interested in because I was more focused on music. But out here, it's just been a time of just me, my family, and the Lord, to
Right.
where God has had to help. He's had to force me to deal with me, if that makes sense.
No, it
Because
makes total sense. It makes total sense. Because
like,
I think, but
oh, it's just some personal hangups I've had, especially with preaching. God showed me why, and I was just like, oh, I've been carrying that for nearly 30 years, and I didn't need to because that
yeah,
situation wasn't my fault. But I always
yeah.
felt like I could have done better and I let people down. So that stopped me. But now I'm realizing like, no, that was their decisions. I did what I could at the time and I've just got to move forward. So just having that experience in itself, it changed my life, for lack of a better way to put it. It just blew my mind like, oh man, I've been in my own way all this time. So it's
Funny,
been
funny
pretty
how that
good.
happens.
Yeah,
Funny how that happens.
for
I
sure, man.
think for me as well. I think like when in 2013 when I kind of walked away from it all.
Hmm.
I realized, like you, I realized all these years I'd been building up me.
Hmm.
You know, maybe not in the same way, but I had been building up me.
Yeah.
Because when I said I was done, the missus was like, well, what do I do? I'm like, what do you mean? What do you do?
Hmm.
What have we done? What have you done? What I mean, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And I realized, yeah, we were doing all these things together, but we weren't doing all these things together. And like
Yeah.
the last 10 years, we've been just focusing on building her, and I
That's
think
dope.
sometimes, he takes us to that place. He takes us to Memphis. He takes us to, for me, pulling away from everything. Like even
Hmm.
now, it's funny. I'm working with somebody, and I went into my band camp and realized I have like 10 unfinished projects up there.
Yeah, we've been talking about that.
So it's like, okay, so I got to get back to work, but at the same time, like you,
Hmm.
refocus on how I do that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this has
And
been dope.
yeah, it's been amazing, man. Like we definitely got to do this more often.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because we can keep going. Again, we're at 32 right now, and
Yeah.
usually I just do 25 and get out. But again, the conversation is, I should have started here and got here and
Mm,
then went forward. But
yeah.
again, because again, it's sharing life.
Yeah.
Again, because when we get to that point, I think that is life, and
Hmm.
really, it's not. There's so much more to life
Yeah.
than just, let's be real, hip hop.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we learn that the hard way, but as long as we learn it, I guess that's what matters.
Right, right. All right, we're gonna call this one. Um, Thank you for joining me on this episode.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks for having me on, man. This has been dope.
yeah, we definitely have to do this again because again,
Yeah.
you already know when me and you get together, we could talk
Yeah,
for hours.
for sure.
And about everything, anything and everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and exit out and call this good. We'll have to do
Okay.
this again. You know, so let me throw this out there.
Okay.
You come up with a topic next time.
I come up with a topic next time? All
You
right.
come up with a topic and let's discuss it.
Okay, that works.
All right. All right. As I always say, y'all, be blessed. Oh, and by the way, sorry, tonight it was just me. The missus isn't here. So we're going to do what we're going to do. Be blessed, y'all.